They had names, they had souls. Majestic silhouettes gliding across the horizon, they carried kings, pirates, warriors, and dreams. But just like men, ships were born, and ships died. Have you ever wondered what happened when a wooden giant breathed its last? Today, we set sail into the forgotten realm of naval history, the deaths of ships in the age of sail. Asterisk, a ship was never just a vessel. In the age of exploration, a ship was a being carved in wood, bathed in salt, and baptized in belief. Her hull might be oak or teak, but her essence was something far more intangible. She had a destiny, a will, and it all began with her name. To name a ship was to breathe life into her bones. It wasn't merely a label, it was a christening of the spirit. Portuguese and Spanish sailors bestowed upon their ships names that echoed faith and beauty. Santa Maria, Snow Gabriel, Nossa Senhora de Canseacu, Flor do Mar, Trindade, Esperança. These were more than names, they were prayers wrapped in timber. Each one whispered promises of protection, safe return, or eternal glory. When a sailor stepped onto a ship named after the Virgin Mary, he wasn't just boarding wood and canvas. He was placing his soul in the hands of something sacred. Some names were reused through generations, not out of tradition alone, but as a kind of reincarnation. If the previous Trindade had braved storms and returned victorious, then surely her successor would carry that legacy in her timbers. In this way, sailors believed names could carry luck, power, or even the favor of the sea itself. Superstition wasn't decoration, it was survival. And so the ritual of naming a ship became a sacred event. Before her hull ever touched the ocean, she was honored like a newborn child. Holy men, priests, monks, or in other cultures, shamans, gathered alongside shipwrights and sailors. They spoke words of blessing, smudged oil or wine across the keel, and performed gestures to ward off evil. Often, the most symbolic moment came when a bottle of wine or champagne was hurled against the prow. If it shattered on the first strike, it meant good fortune. If it didn't, that was a shadow, an omen best not ignored. It wasn't just theater. It was myth-making in motion. In that instant, the ship was no longer just an object of engineering. She became something alive. Sailors swore loyalty to her as if she could hear them. Captains addressed her with reverence, sometimes even speaking to her before battle or storm. She had moods, tempers, and if you asked the old hands, a memory, and the ship remembered. If you treated her well, she would glide through waters like silk. Disrespect her, and the wind would betray you. The mast would groan, and the sea would turn against your course. Every creak of the hull was her whisper. Every wave crashing against her bow was her breath. In time, she became a member of the crew, trusted, feared, and loved. The birth of a ship was not the start of a machine. It was the awakening of a soul destined to wander oceans, cradle empires, and face death not in silence, but with the roar of wind and water around her. Not all ships die of age. Some vanish in the blink of an eye, torn from existence by storms, reefs, or war. Their deaths are not quiet. They do not come gently. They arrive with fury, with splintered wood, howling wind, and the terrible silence that follows when the sea decides to keep what once belonged to men. A shipwreck is not just a nautical failure. It is a tragedy written in salt and sorrow. One moment, a mighty vessel cuts through waves with pride. The next, she is groaning under the weight of a broken mast, her sails shredded like ghosts in the wind. The crew fights to bail water, to cut ropes, to pray. But the ocean listens to no pleas. It takes what it wants. Some of these deaths have become legend. Others only whispers. But every wreck carries with it stories that never reach shore. Perhaps the most haunting tale is that of the Flor do Mar, the flower of the sea. She was not just a ship, but a treasure chest on water, carrying unimaginable wealth looted. From the Sultanate of Malacca in 1511, gold, jewels, spices, artifacts, a floating kingdom in her hold. But power attracts peril. Off the coast of Sumatra, fate struck. A storm rose. The ship cracked open. Her treasure was scattered to the sea like offerings to the abyss. She sank beneath the waves, heavy with fortune and haunted by ambition. Her wreck has never been found. And because of that, she lives not as a corpse, but as a myth. A siren calling treasure hunters to dream and drown out another ghost of the deep. Esmeralda, the gem of Vasco da Gama's fleet. She met her end in 1503, wrecked on the coast of Oman. For centuries, no one knew where her bones rested. She vanished into history, swallowed by sand and silence, until the 21st century, when marine archaeologists uncovered her remains. Among the shattered timbers, they found rare coins, astrolabes, and the hushed breath of a bygone world. A ship that died 500 years ago still had stories left to tell. These wrecks were not just accidents, they were turning points. Each one marked the end of lives, the loss of nations' ambitions, and the reshaping of maps. And in the eyes of the sailors, they weren't just metal and wood lost to the sea. They were comrades, protectors, sometimes even lovers. The bond between man and ship was intimate. So when one went down, it tore something from every soul on board. And still, the ocean was not content to forget. Wrecked ships became phantoms, their names etched in warning on future maps. Here lies disaster. Sailors whispered their stories by lantern light. Some said they heard the groaning of timber at night, as if the ship still sailed beneath the waves. Others believed they could see ghost sails on the horizon, shadows of those who never returned. For every shipwreck, there was a wake in the fabric of the sea. A scar, a memory. But perhaps the most poetic truth is this: when a ship dies in violence, she is not gone. She is transformed. She becomes a legend. Her soul, once tethered to wood and wind, now drifts free, a ghost on the tide. And in every tale told about her, in every diver who descends in search of her bones, she sails again. Even beneath the waves, the dead ships are not silent. They whisper. They wait. And for those who listen carefully, their voices still rise from the deep, telling stories of courage, greed, glory, and loss. Asterisk. Not every ship met her end with drama. Some died slowly, not in battle nor in fury, but in stillness. Their deaths were quiet, stretched over years like breath fading from an aging chest. They weren't lost to the sea, they were surrendered by those who no longer needed them. And in that neglect, they crumbled. Time is cruel to wood. The very waves that once carried a ship toward glory return to erode her from within. Salt seeps into every beam. Worms and barnacles burrow through her hull like silent saboteurs. Sails grow heavy with mildew, ropes unravel, and the proud creak of timber turns into a whimper. She doesn't sink, she sags. She doesn't crash, she cracks. And so day by day, year by year, the mighty vessel becomes hollow. For some, the end came in hidden coves, purposely beached where no one would see. There, the waterline rose, around them like a shroud. Children might climb their ribs, birds nest in their bows, and locals forget their names. The same ship that once carried kings or charted new worlds now lay half buried, rotting in silence, her stories sinking deeper into the mud with every tide. Others found their resting place in forgotten docks, moored to posts that decayed beside them. No fanfare, no final voyage, just abandonment. Sometimes caretakers promised repairs that never came. Sometimes governments promised museums that never opened. And so the ship remained, not sailing, not dying, just waiting. For what, no one knew, but even in death, these ships gave. Their bones, the strong seasoned wood that once held against cannon fire and crashing waves, were harvested. In coastal villages across Portugal and Spain, it's still possible to find homes, chapels, even barns built from the remains of old ships, a wall that once was part of a hull, a beam that once stretched skyward as a mast. The ship lives on, not in motion, but in memory, built into the world she once explored. And what poetry there is in that! A vessel once devoted to conquest now gives shelter. A ship that knew war now holds candles of prayer. Her timbers absorb laughter, songs, births, and weddings. The same wood that faced typhoons now holds the roof above a sleeping child. In death, these ships become quiet saints, guardians of life, long after their own has ended. To sailors who once served on them, these endings were bittersweet. They would visit the old dock, run a hand along the cracked rail, and feel a shiver of recognition, as if the ship remembered them too. Some said the creaking wood still whispered their names. Others claimed the ships groaned in the wind, not from decay, but from longing. Longing to sail one last time. Because for a ship, stillness is not peace, it is mourning. These were beings born to move, to breathe wind, to chase horizons. To leave them moored was to cage a soul. Yet even in this stillness they offered one last act of grace. In being forgotten, they reminded us of the cost of exploration, the passage of time, and the fleeting nature of glory. They taught us that even the mightiest must bow to decay. That wood, like memory, fades unless we choose to remember. And so as you walk a quiet beach and stumble upon a rib of darkened wood jutting from the sand, ask yourself, was it once part of a ship? A story? A life? Because the sea never truly forgets. And neither should we. Some ships never made it home. They vanished beneath the waves, swallowed whole by oceans too vast to remember, too deep to forgive. Yet they were not truly lost. Not to time, not to those who listen. Because beneath the shifting currents and coral-covered wrecks, the spirits of these vessels still linger. They do not rest. They whisper. For centuries, the sea has hidden them in trenches off Sumatra, in the cold waters near Oman, in forgotten archipelagos and along ragged reefs. Ships like the Flor weighed down with the stolen wealth of Malacca, vanished. With a sigh that echoed through centuries. Others, like the Esmeralda of Vasco da Gama's fleet, lay entombed beneath layers of sand and legend until divers stumbled upon their remains, clutching sextants and coins, clues from a past that refused to stay buried. Each relic raised from the seabed tells a story, not just of trade or conquest, but of human hands, of risk, of belief. A rusted cannon once fired in desperation. A silver coin passed from king to sailor to wave. A navigational instrument, now corroded, that once pointed toward hope. These aren't artifacts. They are echoes. Underwater, time behaves differently. A broken hull becomes a reef. Cannons become homes for fish. Planks once tread by boots now cradle coral gardens. The ocean does not destroy, it transforms. These wrecks, these skeletons of ambition, become part of the living sea. They are reborn, not in purpose, but in presence. Not in function, but in legacy. Marine archaeologists speak with reverence, as if brushing dust from a gravestone. They do not merely excavate, they unbury ghosts. Each artifact must be treated with gentleness, as if the ship herself might flinch. There's a sacredness in this work. To touch what once sailed is to feel the heartbeat of history. And even those ships never found still sail, in stories, in legends, in dreams. In taverns and museums, in the quiet pages of old books, their names are spoken like prayers. Trinidad, Santa Maria, Flor, ships that dared to defy the edge of the map and paid the price. Their cargo was not just spices or silver, but belief in what lay beyond the horizon, in what humanity might become. In some villages, elders still speak of cursed ships, of sails seen under moonlight, drifting where no vessel should be. Children grow up hearing tales of ghostly hulls that appear in storms, guiding the living to safety before vanishing without a trace. Are these fables? Perhaps. Or perhaps the sea remembers better than we do, because these ships were more than timber and sail. They were symbols of humanity's greatest paradox, our longing to explore and our fear of the unknown. They carried not just cargo, but courage. And though the sea may hide them, it cannot erase them. Their names, like old songs, return on the wind. And what greater tribute than this? That centuries after their final voyage, people still speak of them, still search for them, still feel their presence beneath the waves. So when you look at the ocean, that endless, breathing blue, know this: somewhere below, wood is still creaking. Stories are still waiting. And a ship that once chased the edge of the world may still be sailing, not in water, but in wonder. Asterisk if this journey through forgotten sails and sunken stories stirred something in you. Don't let it end here. Leave a like to help more people hear these voices from the deep. Share this video with those who still believe that the sea holds secrets. And subscribe to the channel, because every week we raise another forgotten ship from the depths of time and sail once more into the heart of history. Asterisk.